For me, when I'm feeling really masculine, I feel really playful. I love the idea of getting to protect the feminine. I like the idea of being suave. Like that's when I'm feeling really in my masculinity. When I'm feeling feminine, it's usually when I'm taking on a leadership role.
Hey y'all, welcome back to Made It Out. Today I'm here with a top requested guest, Fightmaster. You are on TV, Grey's Anatomy, Shrill. You're a musician. They have a band called Fightmaster. You are an activist, a writer, a podcast host. Check out their podcast, Jocular. And I'm just so grateful for that you're here and that I get to talk to you about gender and society's view on gender and how it still affects us even when we're queer. Will you tell me about where you grew up, where you come from?
I grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio, which is now very cool and was not at all. It was like very, very Midwestern. I don't know. I feel like I had a really simple like 90s childhood in a like white American way. What we weren't ever seeing were gay people. So that was not a part of the conversation.
Right.
I don't think I really had any clear understanding of being different from anybody until I left Cincinnati.
It's just like a lack of exposure.
If anything, I thought I was like just suffering from a lot of like mental illness, where I was like, oh, I'm so depressed. I'm so chronically lonely. I'm so sad all the time, like aching, but had no understanding of like why.
Did you ever like seek out mental health help for that? Or was it just kind of something that you were suffering in silence or?
Definitely suffering in silence. Was always a funny kid and found that like really important to be funny for other people. And so anything that I experienced, I tried to keep very private. It's only in the last few years that I've started to talk more about mental health because I have so many kids that follow me that are having those feelings and might not be having that conversation. And so you just want to like model adulthood, which is I want to not feel ashamed when I'm having a dip or when I'm feeling overworked or when I'm feeling, incredibly fatigued or very lonely or super depressed or I want to model for kids that that's okay. And actually that if I'd had the ability to talk about that, I might have realized things about myself sooner.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Instead of assuming that there was just something inherently wrong with my existence.
Right. So when did you start to realize that you were queer?
Well, this is always a wild answer because I had a girlfriend when I was 14.
Okay.
And we were sexually active.
Okay.
But we did not have any representation. So we did not know what we were doing.
Right.
Like legitimately, it didn't even cross my mind that we were gay. But I did understand that we couldn't tell anybody.
Yeah.
And all of my girlfriends were dating, other guys in our grade. And I was dating, my point guard from my like travel basketball team. You know what I mean? And so it was convenient because I was one of those kids that was like, yeah, she literally did go to another school.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I just never talked about it. And I was not, I don't know. I think she was like really also my primary attachment figure at the time because my parents were going through a pretty wild divorce. And so she was everything to me in a way that I didn't see the girls that were dating guys. They didn't feel that way about them. You know what I mean? Like Brittany and David weren't having the depth of experience that I was having with her. And so I really was like, oh, we've just taken best friendship to a different level. But we can't tell anyone because maybe it's gross. Yeah.
I totally get that. I grew up in Texas and I have these experiences of full on hooking up with girls. And I was just like, oh, that's just something.
That's what we do.
That's just something I do.
Yeah. That's what I do with my friends.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know why everyone's being so fucking weird about it.
So was it after this relationship, when did you have the come to?
I moved to Chicago and I started taking women and gender studies. And Chicago was the first time that I'd ever been in spaces that were like equally as black as they were white and equally as brown as they were white. And there were so many queer kids at DePaul And so, and it just, all of it actually felt so much more comfortable to me. You know, I didn't have this kickback where I was like in any way afraid of the city. I just immediately bloomed. And so there wasn't, once I saw what I could be and the kind of environment I could be in, that's what I just immediately did. It happened fast.
You know, it's so funny because a lot of people will, like, from home where I grew up, are like, oh my God, you moved to LA and like it must have been so scary. And I moved downtown LA when I first moved down here.
That is scary.
But I loved it.
Yeah.
I was like, this is the best place I've ever been. But it was like this exposure thing. Like in Dallas, I had never seen an unhoused person.
Yes.
And then you move to LA and you're like, whoa, like you're just hit with a whole new world and this understanding of class, you know, and, you know, so it's just totally different. But it's weird how it seems like you're exposed and then, we both then just came out.
Well, I do think like what you're talking about is something that we kind of make fun of like our mom's generation because they are hold their purse closer when they enter that environment. And we didn't have that reaction, right? And so I do think that if you're comfortable in an environment that is all white, that is all middle to upper class, that is all straight, if you're comfortable and in that environment and you've been told that that is the best, safest, most wonderful environment, then when you go anywhere else, you're going to clutch your purse. But if you're in that environment and you're constantly uncomfortable, then any place else is going to feel more comfortable for you.
That's pretty mind-blowing.
I don't know a lot of queer kids that I went to high school with that stayed in Ohio, but a lot of my straight friends did. All the people that stayed there, which is, no shitting on Ohio, fuck you, JD Vance, but like all the people that stayed there were really comfortable there. And they settled down and they got married and they had babies, and the ones that weren't comfortable left and they found environments they were comfortable in. You know what I mean?
Wow. I mean, that unlocks a lot for me because I feel like I feel this frustration sometimes with people back home because I'm like, why are you so okay with this? Why are you okay with living this life? And I think you just found the disconnect where I'm like very unforgiving of that, but they're fine. They love it.
Right. It's this like Simone Weil thing, this French philosopher, and I'm just obsessed with this idea that she has of loving somebody as such. We are like constantly in relationships with people where we're loving them for their potential. And, we just think if maybe they could see what we saw, that they could have a much better existence. But actually, if you love somebody as such for who they are, it's not bothersome that your white family feels really comfortable in the suburbs of Texas, clutching, not having to clutch their purse. There's actually nothing wrong with that. Okay, they're there. The problem is when they use that value system that they have there and they impose it on other people, right? But there's nothing inherently wrong with them feeling comfortable where they are, loving their existence as such.
It's just them thinking that everyone should feel that way.
Yeah, it's the imposition that makes it fucked up.
Wow. Thank you for being here. I'm loving this conversation. We're 5 minutes in.
I love being here. Thank you for this wine. I want you to know that I asked for ice cubes. They're melted now, but they were in there.
So what was it like then having the exposure in this class, figuring yourself out and then having to go back into that environment and kind of reintroduce yourself?
Well, it's like the people that when I changed my pronouns and I changed my name, the people that insisted that the name that I was given at birth that did not feel good to me, that they insisted that that's actually, they could prove that they knew me best by continuing to use that name. That's how I felt when I went home. That there were people that were very unhappy with my growth because they actually knew me when. And how dare I think I'm so big that I can just leave this place and become somebody else. Where actually it's, that environment was not conducive to my becoming. Right? So I went somewhere else and I became comfortable, and then I came back to them with relief to be like, good news. I figured out who I am. But they were already very comfortable with who they understood me to be. And so sometimes you just have to let those people go. And I think that people, like when I'm talking to queer kids about, their parents or their families or whatever that are not adapting right away, I have a lot of patience for people that assumed that they knew that the version of you that they were comfortable with is the one that is true. I have a lot of patience for that. Having patience for it does not mean I have to be around it. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? That is like the idea of boundaries. Boundaries don't have to be they don't have to be cruel intentioned. They can just go, I understand that you were way more comfortable with who I was when I was 13 and wanted to kill myself than who I am at 32. I'm very happy.
Right.
And so I'm going to leave you here.
Wow.
And I'm going to go over there.
Fair.
Yeah.
I feel like it's kind of like that, especially I feel with family, like we put each other into these boxes, and doesn't even have to be anything having to do with queerness or gender. It's just like, oh, well, my brother, for example, is an athlete. He's the jock. And my sister is the smart one. She has 2 degrees, and I didn't go to college and I never knew what I wanted to do. So I was kind of the mess, And it's like when I come back home with a different identity that challenges that kind of those boxes or that structure, that family map, it's kind of hard. And it's hard not to fall right back into that and stand your ground and be like, no, this is actually what I am now. And that can be tough.
You're disrupting an entire family system. Mm-hmm. That is true, right? Like maybe that's like the little responsibility that we can take. And it doesn't, responsibility doesn't mean fault. It just is, I'm responsible for changing an entire family system. They know themselves, especially people that identify as more normative. They know themselves usually in opposition to the other. So they know their straightness. They can feel their straightness. They can feel their maleness. They can feel their privilege because they can look at you and see that you're a different sex. You're a different gender. You have a different income. You have a different intellect. They are constant, but if you ask them who they are, they might not be able to describe it as easily as they can describe what you are.
Wow.
Because you've actually been responsible for building their identity. Yeah, my sister's kind of a ditz. Well, you're obviously not a ditz. Like, you have a podcast where you bring people in from different perspectives and you ask them questions because you're a good listener. That's obviously you're not an idiot, you know what I mean? But that might be disruptive to your family system if they have to understand that you too have an intellect.
Wow. I am just learning so much. I know, I'm like taking mental notes here. Okay, I want to get into gender. This is what you studied. I feel like you have a lot of really good takes. I've watched a lot of stuff that I'm like, oh my gosh, it's just blowing my mind. I want to hear from your perspective what masculinity and femininity means to you separately and how they play off of each other.
I think about this all the time because my understanding of femininity and masculinity are a lot different than American cultural norms. Mm-hmm. So I understand femininity and even like womanhood as a construct. Womanhood is this kind of power center. When I've experienced the best leadership, it's come from people who are in their femininity in that moment. Where when I'm having the most fun, I'm usually experiencing somebody's masculinity because I consider masculinity more playful.
Okay.
And so American understanding of masculinity is that masculinity actually equals domination. That's where we get like the alpha. You know what I mean? I walk into a room. I am a man. I size everybody up and I dominate them. And therefore I am the most masculine being. But so then a bulldozer is masculine.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that's an object. And so like if your gender is so important to you, can you ascribe it to all these inanimate things? Like then we call femininity the flower because it's really weak. Like we have a lot of understandings as Americans of gender that aid a capitalist system. They want women to stay home, and so they convince women that to be in their truest form of femininity, they are weak and they can resiliently provide forever. I can give birth, I can be mother, I can be wife, I can be caretaker, and that is me in my most feminine form, right? And that's what the Republicans are talking about right now, is like, where are the feminine women going, right? And then we have masculinity, which for the American male, or for Americans in general, is I can leave the home. I am free. I am a verb. I'm not a noun. I'm not an object. I go and do. I am constantly becoming. I am intellectual. I am in domination. I am strong. I am very active, right? So femininity is passive, masculinity is active. But that's not across all cultures. So then we can have a conversation of gender means different things for different people. For me, when I'm feeling really masculine, I feel really playful. I love the idea of getting to protect the feminine. I like the idea of being suave. Like, that's when I'm feeling really in my masculinity. When I'm feeling feminine, it's usually when I'm taking on a leadership role.
So interesting.
Or when I have to make a decision. And that's for me, because feminine is usually, it's more aware of others, right? It's not necessarily this mother role, but it is this thing of, I need to get something done. And so we have to be really serious right now. And I don't want you to feel uncomfortable. I'm not upset with you, but we have to come together for a common goal. That's me at my most feminine. Me at my most masculine, I'm on a date with my girlfriend. I'm incorrigible. You know what I mean? So it's just it's a much different thing. And I think that it can be different for everybody else. I really think it can be different based on the person. And that's why I like the idea of gender identities, you know, of it not being a binary, of everything feeling really fluid, because my understanding of self actually has nothing to do with your understanding of self.
Right.
And because I have an understanding of self that I created, when you do whatever it is that makes you happy, I don't feel the need to legislate you. But if all of it's made up and my entire understanding of self is built on things that truly I understand at some level are meant to uphold a system, then whatever you do that's not inside of that is going to be threatening to me, and I will have to legislate it. That's a convoluted answer, but that's how I've been thinking about gender recently.
How do you get there? Because it's a lot to unlearn and strip away. And I mean, you really have to get quiet within yourself, but how do you do that?
I think you are following pleasure in an honest way. And it's actually, you make, let's say you make 200 decisions in a day. I check in with myself for most of those decisions. You know what I mean? I'm not running on autopilot. And because of that, I think I have a better understanding of what's bringing me pleasure and what am I doing because I'm supposed to. I have noticed that a lot of my trans masc friends or trans men friends, we are all having these like little boy renaissance. So my house, it looks like a 9-year-old boy set up camp. It's crazy. I've got like fish decals on the wall. Like I've now gotten rid of the furniture because I was like, we need more room for crafts. So like I just found a file cabinet on the side of the street and I was like, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. It's an orange filing cabinet. Like I don't know what's going on. And I'm doing that because I was restricted in a lot of ways. And the way that I experienced society was I was supposed to like a bunch of things. And I didn't like them, but I did them anyway because I was supposed to. And now that I'm like, oh shit, you're not gonna love me as such, I guess I should love me as such, then I'm really looking at my whole life and being like, what is it that I want? What is my dream? I want the fucking fish decal. I want to pick up the filing cabinet. Like, I want the space to be filled with more books than furniture. That is actually what I want. That is bringing me pleasure. I want to sacrifice money and stability for a life of art. I want to be with my partner. I want to. I'm like following all the things that are actually giving me pleasure. And you'll find that your identity reveals itself when that's the question that you're constantly asking. You and I had a little bit of a conversation about femininity before we started this conversation. And I always find it interesting when femmes leave a hetero space and come to a queer space. So what has that been like for you?
Well, I was just going to say a lot of what you're saying is kind of the experience I had moving from Texas to LA. It was like this, and I was Texas. I mean, I had the big blonde hair and the huge boobs and like I had so many surgeries, lipo, butt lifts, all these things to try to get this specific look and, you know, capture a specific attention. And then when I moved here and I look back on most of my life there and I feel like I was asleep. I made so many of those decisions, like who fucking knows why? The story of me getting my boob job, I was in Thailand, like I was always wanted to leave home. I never wanted to be there. So I traveled a lot. I was literally in the China airport flying to Thailand. And I was like, when I get home, I'm going to get a boob job. Booked it, had never seen the doctor. I come home. I literally, the first time I met him was going to get the surgery.
Holy cow, I'm sweating.
I know. It was crazy. I had a friend like drive me there. Just like I made the decision on the size the morning of the surgery.
My God.
It's crazy. And I look back and I'm like, what the fuck? Like I'm reckless, but I'm still like a pretty, you know, with it human. But those years of my life, I'm like, what was I doing? And I think this is why, is because I just was like not in touch with myself or who I was and actually actively rejecting it and just kind of like, nope, not going to deal with any of that. So when I came here and was exposed, I started coming out. I felt like that the boobs and all of that was this like last part of coming out, and getting that surgery and taking them out was like this last thing of like, okay, they just don't fit me. I couldn't tell you why. It was just like, I don't like them anymore. They don't feel right. Still, it wasn't like a masculine, feminine thing. It was just like, I don't like the way I look. My clothes don't look right in this anymore. It's this old piece of me. And then I got them out and now I feel like I miss them.
Really?
Not
in a bad
yes.
or good way. Like I get that.
I can't tell you why. And I think that's why I'm so like starving for this exact conversation because it's like, I don't like the way they look in clothes. I feel so good. Like I feel like a 20-pound weight is off my chest and I can breathe and I feel lighter. But when I look in the mirror, I'm like, I don't like this.
Ooh-wee.
So what does that mean?
I mean, that's fascinating to me because on the other side of that, I'm constantly having a conversation with self about top surgery. And just because I think in like the trans conversation, you're constantly like, well, what side of the spectrum am I falling on here? What about these questions? So like a lot of my friends are getting top surgery. They feel really happy. And I've been trying to sit with myself honestly and say, what part, and there's no wrong answer for anybody, no wrong or right, but what part of this would I be doing for me? And what part of it would I be doing for culture to exist in society? And the top surgery conversation for me is like, oh, well, I don't want to get rid of one of my body parts just because I actually despise the male gaze.
Wow.
And so that's where I am right now. But I don't know that I'll feel that way tomorrow. And the minute that I do feel differently, maybe I'll get top surgery. But I haven't answered that question for myself. And so I'm still, you know what I mean? Like I'm not making a move. But I am like, why? This conversation is bothering me. Every time I take off my shirt, I'm having the conversation. Like, is it about my boobs or is it about that I'm so tired of people kind of undressing me so that when I say that they, them, non-binary, they're like, but we know what you have. Like, I'm kind of tired of like the perversion that boobs allow. But I don't want to make a neutral body just so that I can feel more invisible to these goddamn cishet perverts.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, because when I'm in queer spaces, I don't feel that way about my body. I hang out with a lot of different people with a lot of different bodies. And as long as we're in a queer space, I feel fucking great about what I got. And then I go and I'm with cis het people in a normative environment, and I'm suddenly very conscious of everything. And so that information for me is all I have to be like, okay, for now, we'll be still. For now, we're not going to make a decision about our body because I don't know. What do you think you'd miss? Or what do you miss about having them?
Well, now I'm thinking it's something very similar to what you just said, because I think when I'm in my space and with my people, I feel fine. But it's the minute that I start thinking outside of that space, especially like, you know, when you're on camera and you're doing this kind of stuff, it's like you're seen by everyone. You know, it's not just queer people. So it's like, I think that takes my mind out to like,
100%.
Like, what do I feel about how I'm going to be perceived? So it is still that perception, I think, that's maybe invading.
It's your orientation to the other.
Yeah.
You're more attuned, which we're raised to be this way. So this is like, most of us are like this. You're more attuned to the other's understanding of you than your understanding of self, which is why when we're like, what are you missing about the boobs? You're like, well, fuck, I don't know. But, and same thing when I talk about top surgeries, I'm like, well, I guess in a vacuum, I don't give a shit about my tits. Like, they're actually pretty cool. I don't care. And I'm not looking down at, because I have such a really fluid understanding of my body, I'm not looking at my tits for femininity or masculinity. I'm having a really fine experience with them. It is when I am oriented to the other that I suddenly am very uncomfortable with my body. So then I have to turn my back on the other and reprioritize what's bringing me pleasure. And once again, it could change, right? Like I could one day get naked and instead of being like, good job, I could be like, this has to change. I'm miserable. You know what I mean? That could really change. And I just won't have judgment of myself on that day because I'll know that it was about the pleasure that I was seeking.
Right.
But if I do it for anybody else, I think I'll be really disappointed.
I agree.
What about with femininity? I think it's harder for femmes, honestly, to go from a very cishet, like normative, in any way stifling environment to coming into a queer space. I think it's harder than the trans mass experience or than the masculine experience. That's what I personally believe. How's it been?
I do think like at first, when you're kind of really figuring it out, there's a lot of kind of like, oh no, no, you're not. No, you can't be, which was interesting. And I think I was really fearful because I found myself answering a lot of questions about that. Why haven't you figured this out? Why have you never been with a girl? Why have you never been in a serious relationship with a girl? So that was an interesting experience. And then I think I sought out what was closest to what I had been dating. So that first relationship was really tough just because I think there was a lot of that heteronormative dynamic that I really leaned into and kind of still relied on somebody else to tell me about myself. So I think that's why I'm still struggling, and it permeates a lot of things. Like and this might be a stretch, I don't know, but I think that orientation to self, because I didn't have it for so long with just these things, it's not there for a lot of other things too. In work life and, you know, just everyday decision making. It's like really hard for me to not still default to my partner's my partner's opinion or other people's. You know, I say my partner just because I'm with her every day and we work together, but it's like I find myself questioning a lot, like, is this what's true to me, or is someone else's way of doing things or opinion on the way I do things, or, you know, is that right? And it's so disorienting. I can't find the right answer.
Well, they did that on purpose to you, right? Like they trained you to see yourself, like your survival technique is to see yourself through the male gaze. That is how you survived. That's why I say I think it's harder for femmes, is like you've been brought up looking at yourself through the male gaze. So you actually don't have a clear view of self. That that is tough. That is harder. You have a lot of unlearning to do, and not in like a, pejorative way or a condescending way. And that's how the whole system is built. You know what I mean? And the discomfort that you can experience with your body in moments where you're like oriented towards the other are that survival wise, that you have to be pleasing to the male gaze. And you're worried that right now you're not. Mm-hmm. You're not in the same way that you used to be. And so it is like, that's not the experience that I'm having with like a trans masculine identity. And I don't think that's always the experience that trans men are having, because a lot of times we're in relationships with either other trans people or with femmes, and femmes love us as such. Women really love us as such. And we usually, if we were lucky, we could have that experience even when we didn't have a firm grasp of our identity. We were maybe identifying as lesbians or queer in another way before we entered our trans identity. And so we have had the ability to be loved by a woman very fully for who we are. And in our process of becoming, where men are not trained to love empathetically, it doesn't mean they can't, but that's not how they're brought up. Mm-hmm. They're taught to center themselves, and you're taught to center them. And so then when you make it over into the queer world, you're still trapped in a male brain in a way, where you've not been loved as such. And so even if somebody is loving you for exactly who you are, you're like, what the fuck is this?
Right.
You love me like this? You love me like this? Are you stupid?
It's like, it's almost hard to believe.
Exactly.
You can't intake it. Mm-hmm. I mean, Matilda and I have been together 2.5 years, and sometimes I still can't hear certain things, especially around looks. And when we have this, conversation about the boobs, it's like, you don't get it. You don't understand.
Or you're being kind.
Right.
You're just being kind. You're not being honest. Yeah. Like, no, they do like the way you look. Like, yeah. No, I mean, I have found that with any femme that I've dated that was like with men before, that is a common theme. Is when I'm like, no, I'm literally here because I like the way you look. Like, sorry. Don't worry. Like, I'm not being sweet. I'm vapid. They really can't believe that I would just enjoy their body for exactly what it is. Right? I'm like, I'm looking at this body. There's literally nothing wrong with your body. You know what I mean? But that male gaze is so tough. I think men feel so entitled to everybody's existence that the male gaze is more negative. Because if I'm entitled to all this land, then I'm kind of looking I want to get rid of that tree. Yeah. If everything that I can see to the horizon is mine, then like, I'm going to want to put a gym over there. But if the whole thing is a national park and it actually doesn't belong to me, it belongs to itself, it's sovereign, then I'm like, oh my God, look at all these trees.
Right.
It's a completely different orientation.
So what's the deconstruction?
I think it's like a mantra. Like, you have to find the mantras that mean the most to you. What do you actually need to hear? What do you actually need to hear? I know now the difference between I've been kind of eating garbage and drinking too much and not working out and my back is hurting and I've been overworked. I know the difference now between feeling that way about my body, feeling a little frustrated in my body, versus feeling too big. Mm-hmm. I know that now because I had to parse it apart. And so then the mantra is like, there's nothing wrong with your body, but we do want to feel better. Yeah. And kind of repeated, so that I'm not looking at myself through the male gaze, because truly, fuck those chodes. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. Like, amen.
They don't deserve to be here. Like, if they're not looking at me naked, like, I'm not going to look at me naked through their eyes. It's a treat. It's not for them. So yeah, I don't know. And I did find that in the short experience that I had, I loosely can call it dating men, that even if they liked everything about my body, they still wanted to dominate my mind. And I think I don't think it's not about hating men, but I do hate the construct that is the American male. Mm-hmm. I do hate it. I think it's it's inherently unkind. It's inherently entitled. And I have men in my life that are not that way at all. And so I know that it can be undone. And I know that that's not a natural thing. I know that that's taught. But fuck, it does really make queerness an oasis.
100%. I talked about this recently on an episode, but when I came out, I discovered a fear of men. I have a complete aversion. If I never had it. And it is interesting because I love my dad. He's so great. I have the kindest, sweetest brother, but it's like that. And those were the men I grew up around, but like that doesn't matter. I hate being around men.
Because that's like the exact thing that we make fun of them when they're like, I'm a girl dad. Like, how could I hate women? like knowing a girl doesn't mean that you're not sexist. Like, you know what I mean?
True,
like,
yes.
If anything that I've learned from like really toxic cishet American culture is like their biggest punchline is like, my wife sucks.
Yes.
Like they like actively, their big comedy is that they hate each other. And that can't be true. Like they can't be living like this, but I don't understand what's going on over there. Like they just don't seem very happy. Like all the men that claim to want girlfriends are online commenting on women's posts being like, fuck you, get back in the kitchen, wish you were dead, can't play soccer for real. Like, Harry, hey, it's okay. And then they're mad because women don't want to date them. And you're like, well, the women can tell that you hate their guts.
Right.
So
we're pretty instinctual.
Yeah, so they're probably like a little afraid of you. Yeah, and your posts are public. I don't know if you're knowing. And then you go to their actual thing, and it's like girl dad, believer in Christ, and you're like, well, certainly not.
Yes, literally.
Like, I'm calling the police if the police weren't bad, and they are.
Wow.
Yes.
A lot to unpack in this 1 hour podcast.
I'm not getting it. Yeah, I'm not getting it. I wish I understood. I actually do feel that there's a little bit of a lack of empathy that I have for heterosexuals. And like, I think that to be a heterosexual woman right now, when we're having this massive cultural regression, it actually sucks. Like it actually truly, very honestly, without judgment, not trying to be a bitch, it is such a tough position. Like when we're looking at Gen Z, the girls are getting more liberal, more progressive, and the guys are getting a lot more conservative, a lot more alt-right energy. We have this like massive uptick in incels. We have all these boys that are forgoing getting their driver's license so that they can play more video games. And then they hate gamer girls. Like all these little boys seem to hate women in their spaces, but they feel entitled to having a woman in their life. And all these little girls are like getting made fun of for going to Taylor Swift concerts or for spending $3,000 to go to a Beyonce concert, because when they go to those spaces, they can see a powerful woman sing about womanhood.
Wow.
Everything that little girls do, they get made fun of. Everything that women do is bad. Everything that women do is bad. Everything is looked at as a negative. But it's not like that with queer people. Mm-mm. Like I am in worship of my partner, like very honestly. And the things about her that I like the most or find the most comfort in is her femininity. It's like this almost like head of house energy in like a very spiritual, beautiful way. It's her assuredness. It's her kindness. It's her curiosity. It's like it's this like beautiful like level of brightness that I, ascribe to womanhood and to femme people in my life. And I go and I hang out with my guy friends for a completely different experience. I go and hang out with trans men for a completely different experience. It's brotherhood. We stink. They don't chew with their mouths closed. We're like talking about fish again somehow. You know what I mean? And it is like, you can see that everybody is feeling gender. You can see that everyone's experiencing gender. I'm experiencing gender. You're experiencing gender. I just think we're all having a different experience of gender. Mm-hmm. And that's actually the part that's fun and kinky and cool and interesting. If everyone was doing the exact same thing, like all the women and men that are growing up in this cis heteronormative environment that are actively hating each other because they feel trapped inside of gender roles, then we have what we have right now, which is this weird battle between the sexes that only women can lose.
Yeah. How do we fix it?
How do we fix it?
I'm like, please solve it for us today.
Unfortunately, I'm going to come back to the conversation of loving people as such. You can also hate people as such. I think that men like J.D. Vance, Donald Trump, like, right, it's so obvious, like, we hate these guys. But I don't feel obsessed with them. They're actually very unimportant to me. And of course, if they're elected, they have the power to legislate my body and everybody else, but they can't legislate my brain. And they mean nothing to me. And the only thing that they want is my attention, because my attention is valuable. And the only thing that they want from anybody is attention, which is why they're constantly telling women that they don't have rights over their body, because they know that women will be like, well, surely we do. And then all of our attention is pointed to these limp dick losers. Right?
Wow, yeah.
And the trans community, a community that is best known for loving itself as such, in spite of every violence possible. And what do? They legislate trans kids. Because they want then those kids to go, no, I deserve rights. And now those kids are attuned towards them. I'm not saying check out of the political space. That's not what I'm saying. But I do want to make sure that we're not obsessed with them while we're hating their behavior. I want them to mean less to us. And then when they want to earn our attention, they have to do it through positivity, and they'll get their little positive affirmations like dogs. It's Pavlovian, right? Mm-hmm. If you want attention, positive attention from my community, then come into my community. Give funding to public schools. Like, crush the police state and use more social workers. Like, leave women's bodies alone. Stop trying to legislate parents from being able to protect their trans children. That is something that I will give positive attention for.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to give attention for all this negativity. I don't care.
I mean, I am so curious to hear your thoughts on how toxic masculinity manifests within the queer community.
Okay. The male gaze also applies to butches, and it also applies to trans men. And I've seen that because we have enough research on testosterone to know that it doesn't actually make you an asshole, right? And it doesn't actually make you a man. When women have their highest levels of testosterone is when they're pregnant. And that's when we're seeing that women are seen as like the most feminine thing on the planet is when they're pregnant, right? That's when they have the most testosterone. And I've seen friends of mine take testosterone and use it to justify bad behavior. Because I think there's an adjustment period for some of us where we're worried about our masculinity being validated by toxic men. If a man has an opinion on your transness, on your masculinity, he's probably an asshole. And so his opinion shouldn't matter at all. That is true. Like if some man's going to point to you and say, you're not a real man, his masculinity is fragile and toxic. Why would we base our entire identity off of those bad politics? And so I think when you see relationships that become very heteronormative, that are queer, that become really heteronormative in a bad way, it's that somebody in a masculine position is taking on a role of dominance, which is what we're calling toxic masculinity. It's domination, okay? And we're thinking that in order to have our masculinity, we have to mirror a dominant culture. We don't. There are so many more fun, beautiful ways to be masculine. The real privilege of masculinity is getting to take care of yourself and getting to take care of a woman. And that is very like old school of me. You know, obviously everyone can have their own relationship to it, but my version of masculinity is care. And when I am in a place of dominating, that's not masculine. You're just a bully.
Yeah, it does feel, that is kind of the way I look at men who are like that. I'm like, oh, there is something's in there that you have not figured out. And maybe you aren't so secure in who you are as a man or your masculinity.
Yeah, we got a little thumb looking dick. Yeah, scientifically speaking, they call that a little thumb looking dick. Yeah, you're walking into the room with your little chest puffed out and you're going to be mean to a bunch of people. You got a thumb dick.
Pull it down. Let's see.
Let's see. Prove it. Oh, you're the alpha? Prove it. we come like right back to biological essentialism, and we're like, it's all about their dicks. But you know what? For them, it is.
It is.
It's like a constant obsession. I'm friends with a lot of them. They're talking about it all the time. Me, I'm over here wondering about nuts. What are the nuts up to? What are the relationship to the nuts? I just can't even imagine it. When they're crossing their legs, where are they going? Ooh. Riding a bike? What's going on?
Spin is not.
Oh, when they're running, what's happening? It's not making sense.
Why do you have me picturing this?
I know.
I haven't thought about a man's dick in forever. And
when you think about it soft, running, you're not really picturing a dick like you're supposed to anyway. I don't think anyone's supposed to be. Okay, I know we have to stop, but this is one of my favorite things.
Okay.
One of my favorite things is like, I have actually, that's like a huge, like, I can't stop thinking about what the nuts are up to. I've like, for years I've talked about this. I like literally, because I spent so little time with men, I never saw them soft. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And so I'm straight up like, literally, what's it doing? Like, what's it doing? Like, I know what's happening when a woman's legs are crossed. I understand it. I cannot fucking understand it with a dick. And you'll ask straight women, like, where are Michael's nuts when his legs are crossed? And she's straight up like, ew, I don't know. I would never look at a soft dick. And all the straight women are like, I don't know. Like, straight women in relationships are like, I never see his dick soft. I've never seen it soft. And you're like, okay, I don't know. Like, I've seen my partner walk around naked. I didn't know that you guys are like...
That's a boundary.
Yeah. I didn't realize that straight people have this boundary where they're like, no soft dicks. And even if you ask a guy where his soft dick is, he'll go, well, I guess... Like,
they don't even know.
They don't even know. No one's thinking about it as much as I am.
Yeah, in conclusion.
I know. No one's thinking about it as much as I am. Obsessed.
I think that's a perfect place to end.
Yeah. And if anyone has answers, like, send me the YouTube.
Yeah.
Like, I'm fine looking online.
Last thing. What are you working on in therapy besides this obsession?
Besides my obsession with where are the nuts? Like, what's going on? When they're on a massage table, like,
oh my God.
I'm sorry, I'm lost. Like, why isn't there a little, like, it's none of my business. A little hole, you know, like a little divot. I don't know. Like, shouldn't we be talking about this? Okay. What am I working on in therapy? Well, it should be this is what I'm learning. What am I working on in therapy? I'm working on... I know I was supposed to think about this, and I just absolutely blacked it out the minute.
Do you want me to start? I can tell you what I'm working on.
I would like that. That'd be helpful.
I'm working on, and it actually kind of ties in, I think, I'll be interested to hear what you think. I'm working on accepting feedback more graciously.
Ooh.
I think working with your partner is illuminating. And it's interesting just hearing constant feedback in that different setting. And so I'm learning how to understand that it's coming from someone that loves me and cares about me and wants to see me succeed. Mm-hmm. But I think because of the disorientation of knowing myself and knowing what's right and knowing what's not right and what's me and what's not me, it's really hard to intake that because it's another opinion, you know, and all these different opinions are already in my head.
That's interesting.
It's like, oh, well, okay, I'm already thinking about what is right from the outside perspective. I'm having a hard time accessing what's right from the inside.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's really fascinating. Like, if you have a loose grasp of self, then somebody else's opinions are actually, there is a risk for them to inform you too hardcore. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
And I had never put that together until this conversation of maybe why that's so tough. Because it's like, really, if you take the pause, you're like, okay, and you assess, and it's like, I can tamper down my reaction, you know, but it still doesn't necessarily fix the blow. Like, why is it still such a blow?
It's reverberating. It's a small thing. Or it's small to them, but it's just reverberating forever inside of you. I do get that.
Right.
Yeah.
So something interesting to explore maybe.
At some point, we're going to have dinner, and I'm going to ask you a lot of really rude questions about your upbringing.
Please do.
Yeah. Really fascinating. Because I do think I've talked to my therapist about a similar thing, where if you're in environments where you're like feeling dominated by, where you don't have control, then you do have a looser sense of self because you are doing whatever you need to survive. And it doesn't have to be life or death, and it doesn't mean that your, parents are awful, but it could also just be being a feminine woman in our society. But it's like, if you are constantly trying to survive, then everything's outwards, everything's just like, you're always looking for signals. And then so if anyone criticizes you, you're like, oh, fuck, okay, I guess I am this thing now. So then you're like trying to protect yourself by putting up this wall against everybody else's opinions of you, but all you're caring about is everybody else's. I get it.
Yep.
What I'm saying, I'm with you. I have had a conversation with my therapist where I was like, I don't want to be basically saying I'm worried that I will be lost inside of this relationship. And she was like, why do you think that your identity would be that easy to overturn? I was like, okay, bitch.
Wow.
Talking to me like I'm paying you to fix me.
Like this is your job.
Yeah, like this is your job. What am I talking about in therapy right now? I am, we just had a conversation that was very interesting to me where she was basically asking me to lay out a narrative of some things that happened when I was young. And I could lay out the narrative. And then when she was like, and what did that mean to you? How did you understand that? Everything shut down in my body. And she explained that if I'm 10, when I'm talking about this experience happening, then 10-year-olds can take in tons of information, right? Like 10-year-olds aren't idiots. They can take in a lot of information, but because of frontal lobe development, they're actually not digesting or comprehending any of the information. Mm-hmm. So now we're looking at a 32-year-old and trying to figure out what things meant to me when I was 10, but having to rebuild it so that when somebody gives me criticism or I feel the need to move out of the country because I've upset my partner and never be seen again because I'm so avoidant, I'm not thinking that there's something wrong with me because I don't understand my trauma. I have to understand my trauma so that I can understand why I'm having these responses to things so that I can not do the responses.
Right.
But I can't undo the responses. I can't fix my behavior until I understand the trauma, which sucks.
Yeah. And you know what? I'm pissed because it sounds like I need to do that same thing.
My God, we have jobs. This is exhausting. Fuck. In this economy? I'm seeing Marissa like once a week now. Please. This is my rent. This is awful.
Okay. We play a game. It's called You Holler, You Ghost. They're perfect in every way except for maybe this like one little quirk.
Okay. All right. I'm ready.
They want to have a joint Instagram account.
No, not once ever. No, impossible. And I not only ghost, but like maybe litigation.
I agree on this one. I'm not into it.
Yeah. No. Psychotic.
If you would have caught me at like a younger age,
of course,
and they would have been like,
of course, and that's why we know that it's a mistake. Is because like when you're first like dating people, like when you're in your like early 20s, you're like, I need to show everyone that we're together, and then you like enter any type of like public era, and you're like, I'm not gonna show people like what the outside of my house looks like. You know what I mean?
Ever,
like,
yeah.
No, yeah, 100%. People haven't seen photos of my cat. Like if I was gonna have a joint account, it would be with Chim. You know what I mean? And I don't have one, so that's a you ghost.
That says a lot, yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Okay, what about they leave a Yelp review at every single place they go?
I hate her, whoever this is.
It feels so Karen.
Yeah, no. We don't need to know your opinion on every place. I want to know it. Tell me at dinner. Say, oh, this food's so good.
Yes.
Or I'm not loving the service. But going on an app afterwards, litigation.
Reviews are Karen. Unless you're leaving a review for our podcast, which please do.
Which, you know.
We love reviews.
Yeah, but only good ones.
Yes, please. Positive reviews only.
Yeah, I understand how that works. No bad reviews.
Okay. They dress their pet in an outfit every day.
Jesus, this woman's unbearable. I'm sorry. It's no. We have to have other we're not lining up on our hobbies.
What if they're like really into fashion and they're just like practicing
then put
on
the
their
clothes
dog?
on yourself. I love fashion. I love it that I put the clothes on me. You know what Chim's never worn? An outfit. I'm sorry. You've presented me with a woman I literally hate.
Okay, well, let's try.
There's gonna be one. There's gonna be one thing.
They're an extremely active listener, and sometimes they finish your sentences.
I can deal with that.
Me too.
Yeah, I can deal with that.
This
That's
is a
fine.
good thing. This is a good sign.
Yeah, we're excited. We're probably like in a collaborative mode. Awesome.
I'd rather have you listening than not listening.
Yes, and anticipating the end of my sentences because you're like, oh, I think I know where you're going, as opposed to like, what?
Okay, wait, but what if they always get it wrong?
Oh, that's fun. I think I could live with it. Yeah.
That might drive me fucking insane.
No, I think I could live with it. I think I'd be shocked that like, oh, you're never getting to know me better. But that in some way would be like interesting to me.
It's kind of a bit.
Yeah. Yes, like you're not learning at all.
I like it. All right, we found one.
Yes, we found one.
Thank you for playing.
Yeah, but the one was like, she's an active listener. Like the other three were like, she's kind of like psychotic. She's obsessed with her animal. And then the last one was like, she listens too hard. Thank you for this.
So much. Oh my God. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, this was awesome. You're great.
Cheers. What are we cheersing to?
Your siblings finding out that you're the one with the intellect.
Cheers. Thank you guys for being here another week. Please let us know your thoughts in the comments. Like, subscribe, review, share. You can find today's guest at genderless_gap_ad. Find our show at Made It Out Podcast. Find me at Mal Lowenke. Today's episode was produced by Matilde Jordan and worked on solely by lesbians.
Scrunchy on the floor. Can you pick it up for me? About to go down.